Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody. It's 6:30 on Tuesday night in Tuscaloosa, and that means Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. I'm Gary Harris, alongside Rodney. No Rodney Orr. And I'm standing up. Rodney Orr, not able to be with us this evening. He's not feeling his best. He's a little bit under the weather, but we certainly look forward to having him back next week. It's not the same without you, Rod, but I'm going to try to soldier through. And we're going to start off with big Alabama football news. Head coach Nick Saban looking to replace both of his coordinators this offseason. That's because, according to multiple reports, Bill O'Brien has agreed to return to the New England Patriots as the OC for Bill Belichick. O'Brien got his start in the National Football League as an offensive assistant with the Pats back in 2007. He spent 4 seasons in New England, moving up to offensive coordinator in 2011. Of course, O'Brien spent the past 2 seasons as the OC for Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. And for New England, this is, I think, a great move because Matt Patricia, former defensive coordinator, and Joe Judge, a former special teams coach, even though both were former head coaches, they're defensive and special teams guys. Patricia called the plays. Judge helped with the game plan. It didn't work out too well. Mac Jones says he's excited to work with Bill O'Brien. Of course, they both have those Alabama ties. Okay, here's what we know. Obviously, if you're on social media, you understand not everyone, but a lot of Alabama fans have been on a mission to have a new defensive coordinator. They can check off that box. Pete Golding's at Ole Miss. And to have a new offensive coordinator. Now they can check off that box as O'Brien's going to New England. But let's start with the offensive coordinator and the fact that I do a radio show every morning in Tuscaloosa for 2 hours. I'm on TV every night. And I've gotten some pushback because I think Bill O'Brien's a good football coach. I think he did a good job at the University of Alabama as the offensive coordinator. Let me be honest. 2 seasons, they won an SEC championship, played for a national championship, went 11-2, and won the Sugar Bowl this year. Bryce Young became the first ever quarterback at Alabama to win the Heisman Trophy in 2021. Both years they ranked number 6 in total offense last year, or 2021, number 11 this past year. They averaged over 40 points a game with O'Brien as the offensive coordinator, nearly 500 yards of total offense. I mean, I guess you could have won all the games. I don't know much more you can do offensively. But O'Brien is moving on to the NFL, and listen, it's an amicable parting for Bill O'Brien. He's leaving on great terms with Nick Saban. This was kind of almost predetermined that he would do a couple years at Alabama and then go back to the NFL. Same thing for Golding. He did not get fired, regardless of what some people said. He left to go to Ole Miss on his own. But for Alabama now with the offensive coordinator, of course, the attention turns to who's next, right? And we've got some candidates that we've heard kicked around. I'm going to tell you honestly, I don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. I don't know yet if Nick Saban knows who it's going to be. But these are some names that have been mentioned. All right, Jeff Lebby, former Ole Miss offensive coordinator, currently at Oklahoma. His name has come up. Charlie Weiss Jr., who was on staff at Alabama, now is at Ole Miss as co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. His name has been mentioned. Former Mississippi State and Florida head coach Dan Mullen, who was a college football analyst on ESPN this past year. Cliff Kingsbury, of course, the former Arizona Cardinals head coach. Greg Roman, longtime NFL offensive coordinator. And Joe Brady, quarterback coach for the Buffalo Bills. Of course, he came to fame as the OC at LSU in 2019 when LSU won the national championship with Joe Burrow at quarterback. As for Mullen, he's a guy that is going to coach again at some point. Is he really interested in being an offensive coordinator after being a head coach at 2 different SEC schools? Again, I don't know. My guess is probably not, but his name has been mentioned. Now, Jeff Lebby is a really interesting candidate because Lebby has been in the SEC, as I mentioned, at Ole Miss. He's got that Baylor background. He, of course, now is at Oklahoma with Brent Venables, but he is a guy that, Lane Kiffin gave him a lot of credit. Ole Miss was really, really strong on offense, and that's what got him the opportunity to go back to Oklahoma. But those are a couple guys to keep keep their names in mind with what's going on with the OC position at Alabama. And there may be somebody else that we didn't even mention that winds up being the OC. Again, one thing we do on the show is we tell you what we know. We don't tell you things when we don't know what's going on. And I honestly don't have any idea right now who the offensive coordinator is going to be, but we will continue to follow it, obviously, here on TITV and on WVUA 23. Well, as I said, Alabama's not only going to be hiring an offensive coordinator, the Tide is also looking for a defensive coordinator. Pete Golding, as we talked about last week, is now at Ole Miss, leaving to take a job with Lane Kiffin. Now, last season, the Crimson Tide had a really good defense. I mean, the Tennessee game was a disaster. I get that. But outside of that game, Alabama was pretty good. Still, even with the Tennessee game added in where they gave up 52 points, and they gave up 32 at LSU, they still only gave up 18.2 points per game for the season. That's a top 10 scoring defense. Now, in those two losses, as we know, the defense did not play its best, particularly at Tennessee. That was a bad game. I think that was a bad game in terms of preparation, in terms of game plan, in terms of execution, all the way around. But overall, Alabama's defense was pretty solid, looked really good after the first quarter in the Sugar Bowl against Kansas State. The last three quarters, they kind of dominated that game. So this is a good defense. You know you got talent. Again, I know I'm in the minority here, but I think Pete Golding did a good job. You know, that's my opinion. I'm allowed to have it. I think Pete Golding was a good defensive coordinator. I think he'll do a good job at Ole Miss. But Alabama will be looking to replace him. Obviously, the name that's being floated around the most is Jeremy Pruitt, former Alabama defensive back, former Alabama assistant, former Alabama defensive coordinator, former head coach at Tennessee. Of course, obviously, the situation with Tennessee was a bad one. It ended badly for him, not just because the team didn't have good results on the field, but because of all of the NCAA issues and the cheating scandal that went on at UT. There is a chance he could be given a show cause. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't hire him. There are coaches that have been hired with show cause. We know Bruce Pearl, basketball coach at Auburn, was hired as a head coach with a show cause. But if you hire him, you have got to show, why you're hiring him, and you have to be willing to deal with any penalties that are handed down to him. For instance, if he's handed down a penalty that he can't recruit off campus, then you hire an assistant coach that will not be able to recruit. So that is something to take into account, although there's no doubt when he was at Alabama, he did a really good job. Glenn Schumann, the Georgia co-defensive coordinator, former Alabama assistant coach, went to Alabama. He is the co-DC at Georgia, but it was Will Muschamp that actually called the defense. Could he be looking to make a move? I don't think so, but we'll see. Keep this in mind. Not a lot of people have talked about it, but Todd Grantham is on staff at Alabama right now as an analyst, a defensive analyst. He's a former defensive coordinator at Georgia, Mississippi State, Florida, Louisville. So he's got a lot of experience, really aggressive defensive coordinator, a guy that you might want to keep an eye on. And, of course, we've heard the name Jim Leonhard, who was an outstanding NFL defensive back and then the great defensive coordinator at the University of Wisconsin. And he was, without a job when he didn't get the head coaching job there that he applied for. So he's on the market. He could be a guy that comes in that doesn't really have any Saban ties that might look to do some things differently on defense. Maybe Alabama will look there. We will keep you up to date on the coordinator searches at the University of Alabama. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama men's basketball had another big win on Saturday on the road at a place that's given them a lot of trouble. And the Crimson Tide back in action tomorrow night against Mississippi State in Coleman Coliseum. It's the second time to play the Bulldogs. And we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at TITV@WVUA23.com or even tweet at us. Use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, even without Rodney Orr. We're getting it done. TITV. We'll be right back after this. Bama men's basketball right now is a juggernaut. Crimson Tide captured another road win this past Saturday at Missouri, 85-64 in Missouri. Columbia has been a house of horrors for Nate Oates, so that was a big win. Now, Kobe Brown out of Huntsville, Missouri's best player, in all fairness, did not play in the game. But still, Alabama wins it by 21. So even if Kobe played, I don't know if he would have made 21 points worth of difference. But Alabama's defense was good, or either Missouri's shooting was really bad, one or the other. Mizzou shot 3 of 28 from behind the arc. Namari Burnett returned to action for the first time since December 16th with that wrist. He played a little bit. Should play tomorrow night as well against Mississippi State, and Namari Burnett will be a big addition to this team. Mark Sears and Noah Clowney led the way with scoring with 17. That's news because Brandon Miller only had 15, but Clowney also had 15 rebounds to go along with those 17 points, 17 and 15, a double-double for big Noah Clowney. And welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. I'm Gary Harris, minus Rodney Orr tonight. He's not feeling his best, but we certainly, Rodney, send you our well wishes and hope you're back with us next week. Now, for Alabama basketball, as I said, Tide just keeps moving up to number 2 in the latest polls, both the coaches' polls and the AP poll, picking up 23 first-place votes in the AP poll for its highest ranking since the Tide reached number 1 under Mark Godfrey 20 years ago. Alabama at 17-2 overall and 7-0 in the SEC has made a steady climb since being ranked number 20 in the preseason AP Top 25, moving into the top 10 in early December. Now, Alabama is back in Coleman Coliseum, as we mentioned, tomorrow for the first time in 11 days. Pardon me, to take on the struggling Mississippi State Bulldogs. Mississippi State just 1-6 in SEC play. Alabama's already beaten them over in Starkville to start conference play, 78-67. The Bulldogs, though, at that point, were ranked in the top 25. Remember, they had, I think, an 11-1 pre-conference schedule, but things have caught up with them since they got into league play. Still, they're a capable basketball team. If you're Alabama, as good as Alabama is, if you don't play well in conference play, you can always get upset. Now, the bottom line is, if Alabama plays well, Mississippi State's not going to come in here tomorrow night and win the game. I mean, I'm not going to blow any smoke up your skirt. That's just the reality of it. But for Alabama, it's just you just want to keep on keeping on. You know, you just want to keep on winning. The Tide playing tomorrow night and then going out of the conference on Saturday when they go to Norman, Oklahoma for that Big 12 SEC Challenge. So that'll be a tough game out there on the road. All right, now it's time for, well, let's talk a little more about Alabama and just what they're doing before we get to Coach Talk. We know what happened a week ago Sunday with Darius Miles, who was charged with capital murder in a shooting here near the University of Alabama campus. He was teammates with these guys. They've had to deal with that off the court. They've had to try to keep their focus on the court. But I think they've got a great head coach in Nate Oates, because I think for Nate Oates, I think he's honest with his guys. I think he's let them hurt. You know, the university has provided counseling and grief management folks to deal with them. So I think they've been able to manage it. Still, though, this basketball team is hurting. But when they get on the court, I really think it's a respite for them. I think it's a break from school, a break from dealing with their grief, and it's a time to go out and play basketball. And they continue not just to win, but as I said, you know, really blow people out. Their average margin of victory in SEC play is better than 20 points a game. That's remarkable. All right, now it's time for Coach Talk. Earlier today, Crimson Tide head coach Nate Oates met with the media and spoke about tomorrow night's game against Mississippi State. His main message, he wants his team to keep trying to get better and don't let complacency set in based on all the praise that you've been receiving recently.
But I think this group's done a really good job fighting it on their own. You know, we talk about not getting complacent and, you know, how maybe last year's team did after we had some early non-conference wins. But I think this group's pretty mature, and I think the depth, the maturity, the professionalism, the depth of the team, all of it helps.
All right, a key word for Nate Oates there is complacency, and he said that this team has been mature enough, even though they start 3 true freshmen and Rylan Griffin, another true freshman, plays a lot. This is a mature team. Like I said, they've been able to focus on the task at hand, and even dealing with the Darius Miles issue, the one thing I think that they have to remember is you can have sympathy and empathy for that situation, but for basketball, you have to continue to move on and play the games, and that's what they're doing. The schedule is going to get tougher next week with as they get into conference play with road trips to Tennessee and Auburn. So it's going to be tougher. But at the same time, this is a really good team. All right, let's talk about the Alabama women here for just a moment. And despite a home loss to SEC foe LSU last night, of course, everybody's lost to LSU. They're 20-0. The Alabama women continue to have a really good season at 15-5 overall. Now, they got handled last night. They lost by 38 to number 4 ranked and unbeaten LSU at home. But this is a team that they play hard. They're a really good team. They're a good team. They're a solid team. You know, they played a great team last night. And when you play a great team, sometimes, you know, it doesn't go your way. But still, Sarah Ashley Barker, Brittany Davis, all these players for Alabama continue to play well. They're on the road on Thursday night, playing Arkansas up in Fayetteville at 6 p.m. the tip-off on Thursday. So for Alabama women's basketball, I think the goal is to make it to the NCAA tournament. And I believe they are an NCAA tournament team. Now, are they the men, we're talking about a Final Four national championship. Is Alabama on the women's side that kind of team? No, they're not. But they are an NCAA tournament team. I think they're good enough. And, you know, Christy Curry has brought stability to this program, She's brought credibility. She's brought a work ethic. And she's brought some consistently good basketball. Now, the challenge will be taking that next step. And that what I mean by that, where the goal isn't just to make it into the NCAA tournament. It is to do some damage when you're there. So we're taking a look there at Joni Taylor, former Alabama player who brought A&M in here last week, and Alabama put it on them. But for Alabama basketball, it's about getting into the tournament this year and then seeing what you can do. All right, former Alabama men's basketball player Richard Hendrix is going to be broadcasting alongside Chris Stewart on tomorrow night during the game against Mississippi State. Brian Passing, the normal men's basketball analyst, has a prior commitment. Hendrix has been working the women's games with Roger Hoover, and he was a great player, as we know, here at Alabama, played overseas for a lot of years. I've known Richard Hendrix a long time. He's a great gentleman, and he's a terrific broadcaster, and he'll do a good job tomorrow night sitting in for Brian Passing. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama baseball receives some high praise and rankings heading into the upcoming season. And up next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. I know Rodney's not here, but I'll still try to handle your phone calls and answer your questions. 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Lines are open. So give us a call, or you can email us at TITV@WVUA23.com. We'll be right back with more of the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. It's the 2023 campaign, ranked number 20 in D1Baseball.com's preseason top 25. The number 20 ranking is the highest by any outlet this preseason as far as the Crimson Tide, and it's the highest ranking from D1 since Bama opened the 2015 campaign at number 20. Alabama is one of 9 teams from the SEC on D1's preseason list, including 7 in the top 10. And 4 of those are from the SEC West alone. LSU at number 1, Ole Miss at 4, Texas A&M at 5, and Arkansas at 8. So Alabama at 20 sounds pretty good until you hear almost the rest of the league is ranked ahead of Alabama. But still, Alabama baseball looking to have a good season. All right, welcome back into the program. Gary Harris minus Rodney Orr tonight, who's not feeling his best. But we're going to jump out on the TITV hotline and welcome in William from Tuscaloosa. Hey, William, how are you?
Hey, how you doing today? First-time caller.
Oh, good to have you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just reading about D'Amico Ryan, and he canceled 2 interviews he had in the NFL. And being a defensive coordinator with the 49ers, I don't think he's going to be there much longer. But do you think he would be a good fit for Alabama? Do you think he would come here? What do you think?
William, I think if he wanted to come here and Nick Saban offered him a job, I think he'd be a great fit because I think he's a great coach. And I think the job he's done with the 49ers has been terrific. He's young. He's energetic. Do I think he's going to come? No, I don't. And I do think, William, that he is going to be a head coach next year in the National Football League. Now, he had some opportunities last year to interview. But, yeah, maybe he's turned down a couple, but he's also interviewed for several jobs. And my expectation is right now, of course, San Francisco getting ready for the NFC Championship game this Sunday at Philadelphia against the Eagles. But my expectation is that D'Amico Ryans is going to be offered and accept an NFL head coaching position for 2023. Now, could some time down the road he come back to Alabama? Who knows? Maybe he'll come back as head coach. And I definitely think he'd be a great fit at Alabama, but I think right now with where he's at in his career in the NFL, that's where he's looking to stay. And I do think he'll wind up being a head coach next year for some team in the NFL. All right, let's get to an email. And our email question of the day is brought to you by KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family. And let's go ahead and check out that email. It's from Go Line Stan. Who is your choice for offensive and defensive coordinator? Will Saban promote from within? All right, Go Line Stan there on Twitter. That's actually a Twitter question. You know, I don't really have a choice. And I know that you asked me specifically, and if Rodney was here, he'd probably tell you. And the reason I don't is that I have interest, obviously, in who it's going to be. But I don't garner to have a guess as to who would be the best fit for those positions because Nick Saban knows so much more than I do. I'll just say this. I think that Nick Saban understands the importance of these hires. He's made a lot of coordinator hires since he's been here. He's had great success. And I think that he's going to make a great hire on both sides of the ball. I think he'll take his time. I don't think he feels any pressure. He's already got the spring itinerary laid out. He'll want to get the coordinators in at least 2 or 3 weeks ahead of spring practice. But I would look for maybe another week or two before their coordinator hires here at the University of Alabama. All right, we'll be back with more phone calls and emails. Phone lines are open, 205-348-9882. Give us a call. TITV will continue right after this. Welcome back to TITV. I'm Gary Harris. Solo tonight. Rodney Orr out ill, but he'll be back next week. All right, let's jump back out on the phone lines and get one more call in. CB is with us right here in Tuscaloosa. What's up, CB?
Ain't nothing going on, man. I hope Rodney gets all right, and I hope both y'all's health stay good.
Thank you, sir.
The older we get, brother, it's But anyway, I was going to say something about the coaches, but you done asked me if you know anything, you ain't putting it out. So I hope everything goes well. Talk to you later.
All right, CB, thank you. Yeah, again, really, I'm following the situation like most journalists are and sportscasters, sports writers. Yeah, I'm hearing some things, but not anything really that would allow me to come out and say, I think this guy's going to be the guy. I don't know at this point. I do think that, as I said, it may be a week or two before one or both these hirings are made as far as the coordinators are concerned, but we'll keep you up to date. All right, we're going to be back to wrap up this edition of Tider Insider TV from beautiful University of Alabama campus. We're right here inside the Digital Media Center in Bryant-Denny Stadium. We'll be back after this. And thank you for tuning in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don't forget, if you missed any of the program, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 following the news at 10, or online anytime at WVUA23.com. I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. We're going to leave you tonight with the 4-0 Alabama men's tennis team picking up their latest victory over UAB. Hopefully Rodney Orr will be back with us next week. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week on Tider Insider TV.